It was a Thursday when everything changed. I remember the afternoon light pouring through the windows as I tidied up, watching specks float lazily in the golden beams. The air smelled of citrus cleaner and aged paper from the bookshelf. I was humming an old tune, adjusting throw pillows and straightening photo frames when I heard the door swing open. My son-in-law, Michael, stepped inside. He'd been out running errands, and the scent of fresh air and cologne drifted in with him. "Hi, Patricia," he said, pausing in the entryway with a shopping bag in hand. Something in his voice made me look up. There was a hesitation there, like he was working up to something important. I gestured for him to come in. As he set the bag down, I noticed him studying the room with unusual attention. The tilted lamp, the stack of magazines, the worn surface of the wooden table. "You see every little thing," he murmured, almost to himself. Then he looked directly at me and asked something I hadn't expected. "Patricia, do you ever feel like there's a side of yourself you keep hidden? Something you've never really let anyone see?" I stopped dusting mid-motion. His tone carried weight, almost urgency, but also tremendous respect. This wasn't casual conversation. I set down my cloth and motioned toward the couch. "I suppose everyone does," I said carefully. "What makes you ask?" He sat down, fingers tapping the bag absently. "Lately, I've been thinking that life's too brief to keep things bottled up. Sometimes just talking to someone who truly listens changes everything." His honesty unlocked something in me. The atmosphere shifted, becoming tender and intimate in a profound, non-romantic way. This was two people recognizing each other's humanity, despite the family boundaries between us. I understood this wasn't just a chat. It was an invitation to go deeper with someone I genuinely trusted. The sunlight seemed brighter against the faded curtains as I began speaking freely. I shared regrets I'd buried, small victories I'd never celebrated, quiet anxieties I'd dismissed as unimportant. Michael listened completely, his attention never wavering, occasionally nodding with real understanding. When I finally paused, a peaceful silence filled the space, the kind that feels rich rather than empty. Something fundamental had shifted between us, and within me too. After he left, the house felt transformed, lighter somehow. Walking past the living room in the following days, the streaming sunlight seemed more vibrant and the floating dust more celebratory. His question kept echoing. "Do you ever feel like there's a side of yourself you keep hidden?" I started noticing details I'd overlooked before. The floorboards creaking reminded me of childhood afternoons in my parents' home. The curtains moving in the breeze carried garden fragrances inside. Even my own voice sounded different when I read aloud, more intentional, more willing to explore my deeper feelings. Several evenings later, Michael returned with a small box of chocolates. "I thought you'd enjoy these," he said casually, though his eyes held that same quiet depth. "No particular reason, just wanted to visit." I laughed softly, placing the box on the table. "You're being too kind," I said, though I meant something beyond material generosity. His presence felt steadying, like those rare conversations with old friends when time disappears and you forget everything else. We sat in comfortable silence, listening to the refrigerator hum and distant traffic sounds. Then he spoke hesitantly. "I've been thinking about what I asked before, about hiding parts of ourselves. Sometimes we conceal things not from shame, but from fear that nobody will truly understand." I nodded, feeling emotion tighten my throat. Yes, exactly that. I realized how desperately I'd wanted to be truly seen beyond the surface roles I played, the cooking, the housekeeping, the automatic social pleasantries. Michael wasn't judging or trying to fix anything. He was simply present, creating space where I could unfold safely.
We talked quietly at first about seemingly trivial things: favorite books, his childhood neighborhood, my summer memories. But gradually the conversation deepened. We shared minor regrets, subtle yearnings, things I'd hidden even from my own daughter. The house seemed to contract around us, becoming more intimate, as if it too wanted to witness this exchange. When he left that evening, I felt an unusual mixture of anticipation and tranquility. Something was awakening inside me, something tender yet insistent, an unexpected spark of self-discovery. I realized that genuine connection doesn't always announce itself dramatically. Sometimes it arrives quietly, through a glance, a question, or simply being present when someone dares to speak their truth. For the first time in years, I felt like I was no longer holding back, not because circumstances demanded it, but because I chose not to. The following days felt suspended in a soft awareness. Michael's visits had marked me subtly, and I found myself perceiving everything more acutely. The sunlight creating golden patterns on the rug, the jasmine scent drifting through open windows, the wall clock's rhythmic ticking, always there but suddenly feeling like a heartbeat I could sense. One Saturday morning, he arrived without knocking, entering with the easy confidence born from years of family connection, yet somehow stepping into a new, delicate space between us. "Thought you might want company," he said, leaning against the doorframe. His tone was light, but that quiet intensity flickered in his eyes again. We settled on the couch and I poured tea, watching steam curl upward. The silence felt comfortable, like a well-worn blanket radiating warmth and trust. We discussed small things initially, beloved recipes, movies from decades past, but soon the conversation drifted toward more personal territory. "You know, Patricia," Michael said softly, tracing his cup's rim, "I've always admired how you hold everything together here, but I wonder, do you ever think about what you truly want? Not for others, just for yourself." The question struck unexpectedly. I realized I'd spent so many years living for others, my children, my friends, my work, that I'd forgotten my own desires. My heart accelerated, not with anxiety, but with strange excitement. "I don't know," I admitted honestly. "I suppose I've been afraid to even ask myself." Michael nodded, his gaze gentle but steady. "It's okay to be afraid, but sometimes just asking the question opens doors you didn't know existed." Something shifted inside me then. A part of myself that had been quiet, buried beneath routine and obligation, stirred awake. I began sharing things I hadn't voiced in years, dreams I'd abandoned, books I'd longed to write, places I'd wanted to visit but never dared. Michael listened completely, not interrupting, not judging, simply holding space for my words to breathe. The more I spoke, the more alive I felt. Tension I hadn't realized I carried began melting, replaced with gentle warmth, a sense of being seen and understood in ways I hadn't experienced in decades. As afternoon sunlight angled across the room, catching in the lines of his face, I felt a connection that was tender, respectful, and profoundly human. We didn't rush. There were no grand gestures or dramatic confessions, just quiet moments of recognition, laughter at small memories, and conversation that sinks into your bones and makes you feel less alone. When he left that day, I felt like I'd discovered a hidden part of myself, a corner of my heart that had been waiting quietly for someone to acknowledge it. That evening, walking through the living room as the sun dipped behind the trees, I realized my home no longer felt like just a place. It felt like a witness, a companion to my awakening. In sharing these quiet, vulnerable moments with Michael, I'd begun rediscovering not only myself, but the subtle beauty of connection, the kind that doesn't shout but whispers and lingers long after it's gone. The weeks passed gently, almost imperceptibly, but each encounter left its mark. It wasn't about grand gestures or dramatic revelations, it was the small things, the quiet moments of understanding, the way our conversations lingered after he'd gone. I noticed a new rhythm in my days, a subtle lightness in my movements, a soft patience in how I moved through the house. One afternoon, while rearranging books on the living room shelves, warm sunlight painting stripes across the carpet, Michael arrived carrying a small notebook. "I thought we could share something," he said, a little shy. Just a small project, if you're interested. I smiled, and we settled on the sofa with tea, the room's quiet comfort wrapping around us. We began writing thoughts, reflections, dreams we'd tucked away. It felt strangely intimate, not physically, but in how our thoughts intertwined, how our words filled spaces that had once been silent. As we wrote, I realized something profound. This connection wasn't about conventional desire. It was about recognition, about two people honoring each other's inner lives, about creating space where vulnerability could exist without fear. In that space, I discovered courage I hadn't known I possessed, the courage to embrace my own story, my own truths, without hiding them. Later, after Michael had left, I sat in the living room, fading lights spilling across the furniture, and felt deep gratitude. For the first time in years, I felt fully present in my own life. I thought about his initial question. Do you ever feel like there's a side of yourself you keep hidden? I realized I'd been holding back not from shame, but from habit. Now, gently, quietly, I was letting those parts of myself breathe. I understood that connection, the kind that touches the heart, doesn't always arrive loudly or dramatically. Sometimes it comes softly, like a breeze brushing against your skin, subtle but undeniable. When it does, it has the power to change how you see yourself and the world around you. As night settled and the house grew quiet, I poured a final cup of tea and sat by the window. The stars were beginning to appear, distant and steady. I realized that, like those stars, certain moments in life shine quietly, but their light lasts far longer than you might expect. That evening, I didn't feel alone. I felt seen, understood, and alive in ways I hadn't in years. The unexpected connection I'd discovered with Michael had opened a door not just between us, but within myself, a door to authenticity, to courage, and to the quiet joy of being truly present in my own life. And for the first time in a long time, I welcomed what came next with an open heart.